Well, it was in fact President Obama who had the final call when it was coming down to the final moments of the decision made to release Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl and those 5 Taliban prisoners. Also, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel saying today before a House committee that Bergdahl's future solely depends on the House or the military's investigation, which will include an interview with Bergdahl himself. Hagel signed off on the prisoner exchange with permission from the president back on May 31st. The Obama administration recently offered up 2 classified briefings recently, one for the Senate Armed Services Committee, another one for the House members on that same committee this week. The sessions have only turned up the heat coming from Capitol Hill on the White House. Members of both parties complain that President Obama needed to inform Congress before that exchange actually took place. The National Defense Authorization Act says 30 days notice is the law. Yesterday, Senator Dick Durbin, one of the closest Obama allies, said the White House only had a few hours' notice and they were concerned about leaks. But in the days following up, Hagel has pressed the nation as well to withhold judgment on Bergdahl before they can conduct that investigation.
And certainly, I think a bit unfair to Sergeant Bergdahl's family and to him to presume anything. We don't do that in the United States. We rely on facts.
Well, those facts are the purpose of this investigation, the hearing on Capitol Hill today. That was Secretary Hagel 10 days ago, echoing that again today before that House committee. Today is the first time anyone from the president's inner circle who was part of the decision-making team, that's the first time they've publicly answered questions from Congress on this issue. President Obama not answering questions, or he was answering questions rather yesterday about student debt, but he was also asked about that shooting in Oregon at a high school where a gunman opened fire, killing a 14-year-old boy.
To take some basic steps to, so far, is the fact that this society has not been willing to take some basic steps to keep guns out of the hands of people who can do just unbelievable damage. We're the only society, we're the only developed country on earth where this happens.
Stay tuned. We'll have more reaction to the president's comments coming up in just a second. The president also said the United States, of course, as you heard there, is the only country where this is happening. Now, the season's first hurricane has formed off Mexico's Pacific coast. Actually, it's the 3rd hurricane in the Pacific. Hurricane Christina's maximum sustained winds are near 75 miles per hour. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says the additional strengthening is expected over the next 2 days, but as you can see here from NOAA's hurricane track, it looks like it's headed off to sea. Just a reminder that the hurricane season is here upon us, and something we should all be watching out for. And we'll start overseas, where earlier we were reporting that tens of thousands of refugees are currently fleeing Iraq for the enclave of Kurdistan. Now Iraq's prime minister is calling for closer cooperation between Baghdad and Kurdistan, the regional government there, to help push out al-Qaeda forces. Iraq's prime minister saying today that his country is facing, quote, a mortal threat at the hands of the group ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. The militants linked to al-Qaeda have taken control of key areas of Iraq, areas that U.S. troops have fought for over the last decade. During an EU Arab League meeting today, Iraq's prime minister said you cannot leave these people to stay there, to entrench themselves for a long time, so there has to be a really quick response to what has happened. Meanwhile, the State Department is urging the Iraqi people to stand up to the threat. Now to the Philippines. The top commander of the militant group linked to al-Qaeda in that country reportedly has been captured now. Authorities say police arrested Gahir Mundos earlier today. Mundos is suspected of carrying out several bombings and kidnappings throughout the Philippines. He's also on the U.S. most wanted list. He's received funding from terrorist groups linked to al-Qaeda in the past. Mundos was captured before in 2004, but he escaped in 2007. He is believed to have 300 armed fighters reporting to him. Back here at home, despite firing top executives and promising change, GM is still facing intense backlash over those failed ignition switches. Families of victims who were killed in car accidents as a result of those switches protested outside GM's headquarters yesterday. Those protests happening right before GM's annual shareholders meeting. Some families are saying that General Motors is more concerned about legalities rather than taking corrective action, and some are even calling on Attorney General Eric Holder to investigate.
Calling on Eric Holder from the Department of Justice to hold GM criminally liable. Those employees that knew and did nothing or actively tried to cover it up they need to do real jail time.
Meantime, CEO Mary Barra responded by saying that GM's commitment to make sure that this is never happening again is strong. GM has since admitted to knowing about the problem for over a decade, but did not recall any vehicles until earlier this year.